I hadn't planned to tell them about the money right away. I thought it would be more special to wait until the moment felt right, maybe during dinner. Or when we sat together in the living room like we used to when he was a boy. My son, Ethan, had always been good at making me feel needed, even after he got married. But lately, things had shifted. I told myself it was just life getting busier. The truth is, I'd been feeling like a guest in their home for a long time. It's a tolerated presence. And when I arrived that Friday afternoon with the cashier's check tucked carefully in my purse, I felt it again, that subtle tension in the air. My daughter-in-law, Melissa, answered the door with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She hugged me stiffly, already looking over my shoulder as if expecting someone more interesting to arrive. Ethan's still on his way from work. She said, "You can wait in the kitchen, I guess. Do you want tea?" Hold on a moment before we move forward. Let us know where in the world you're watching from. And if you're loving these stories, don't forget to hit subscribe. Tomorrow's episode is going to be absolutely mind-blowing. "I'll just sit for a bit," I replied, dragging my small suitcase inside. Their home was nice, newly renovated. Open floor plan, stainless steel appliances. I had helped pay for most of it 3 years ago. Melissa had picked out everything, even though Ethan said she didn't work. She handles the design and I handle the mortgage. He used to joke that the guest room was colder than I remembered. They had switched the sheets, but it smelled like cleaning spray instead of anything familiar. I set down my suitcase and went back to the kitchen where Melissa was scrolling through her phone. "So, how long will you be staying this time?" she asked without looking up. I was thinking a week, maybe less, depending. She nodded vaguely. "Right. Okay, just let me know when." That evening, Ethan came home, gave me a quick hug, and seemed distracted through dinner. He asked how the flight was, but not much else. I watched as Melissa served herself first and passed Ethan the best piece of salmon before turning to me. No one asked what brought me out here, why I chose this weekend to visit. No one noticed how tightly I was holding onto my purse beneath the table. After dinner, I excused myself early. The silence in the guest room was heavy, and even though I was tired, I couldn't fall asleep. Around midnight, I got up to use the bathroom and heard voices coming from the hallway. I paused by the door, thinking maybe Ethan was on the phone. But then I heard Melissa's voice, low and sharp. "She keeps looking at her bag. I'm telling you, it's in there." It's a beat of silence. Then Ethan, sounding nervous. "You think she brought it?" "She did. I saw the envelope when she got here." She's not subtle. "Okay, but what do you want me to do?" "Nothing right now," Melissa said, her voice turning almost amused. "By tomorrow, she'll be out of our way." I stood frozen. My heart felt like it had stopped. They were talking about me. The door was cracked just slightly enough for me to see a sliver of the hallway. Ethan was leaning against the wall, arms crossed. Melissa sat on the bottom stair, calm, focused, like someone with a plan. My stomach turned. They knew I had money. And somehow, they knew I'd brought it. That check had been sitting in my purse since the morning. I thought I was giving my son a future, helping them buy land, maybe start a business. I never expected this. I backed into the room, gently closed the door, and sat on the edge of the bed. My hands were trembling. I stared at the check inside my wallet and felt like I was holding a loaded weapon. I didn't sleep. I lay awake until the light started to come through the blinds. When I heard Melissa's footsteps moving toward the kitchen, I got up quietly and began packing. I didn't want confrontation, not yet. Not without knowing what else they were planning. By 7 a.m., I was dressed. My bag packed, my check secured in an inside pocket. Ethan knocked gently on the guest room door. "Morning, Mom. We were thinking of making pancakes. Melissa found this recipe with ricotta." "I'm heading out," I said through the door, not opening it. "What?" "I'm going to see an old friend in town. I'll call you later." A pause. "You sure you're okay?" I opened the door and looked at him. Really looked at him. He had dark circles under his eyes, and he was wearing the same shirt from yesterday. My son, my only child, looked like he didn't recognize me anymore. "I'm fine," I said. "It's just something I need to do." I walked out without saying goodbye to Melissa. She didn't come out of the kitchen at the curb. I called a car and sat with my suitcase beside me like a shield. The driver took me to a small hotel near the downtown area. I checked in for 3 nights. Then I opened my laptop and started searching for a lawyer, not to sue. Not yet. But I needed someone who understood asset protection, because my gut told me this wasn't over, and neither was I. I stayed in that hotel room longer than I planned. After checking in, I sat on the bed. For a long time, staring at the small safe in the closet. The check was still in my purse. I hadn't even looked at it since I left Ethan's house. My fingers kept going to it as if to confirm it was still there, $500,000. A lifetime of savings, inheritance, and careful decisions. I had brought it as a gift. I thought it would help my son move forward, maybe even feel proud of me instead. I found out they were plotting to get rid of me. I didn't cry. I didn't feel sad. It was something else, like a rope had snapped inside me. I kept thinking about Melissa's voice, so calm, so sure of herself. She'll be out of our way. The way she said it made it clear this wasn't just an idea she came up with in the moment. They'd talked about this before. They'd planned it. The hotel room was simple neutral walls, a small desk, 2 lamps. So it was the kind of space that doesn't feel like anywhere. But for now, it felt safer than my son's house. That afternoon, I called a lawyer. Her name was Carla Bennett. And I chose her because her firm specialized in elder planning and asset protection. I explained I was in town briefly and had a few legal questions. She offered me an appointment for the next day. I said yes. I didn't sleep much that night either, but I didn't feel tired. I kept running everything through my head, the things I'd ignored, the way Melissa always called me Maggie instead of Mom. The time Ethan said they had too much going on for me to visit for Thanksgiving. The comment about downsizing me to a nursing condo eventually, just to make things easier for everyone. I thought they were just joking, maybe insensitive, but not dangerous. Now I wasn't sure. The next morning, I arrived at Carla's office 20 minutes early. It was in a small commercial building with tinted windows and a sign that read Bennett and Shaw, Estate Planning. Elder Law, Family Protection. The receptionist offered me water and led me to a quiet room with a small round table. Carla came in a few minutes later. She was in her 50s, with sharp eyes and a calm demeanor. She shook my hand and sat down across from me. "So, Maggie," she began, "how can I help you?" I took the check from my purse and laid it flat on the table. "I was going to give this to my son," I said, "but I'm not anymore." Her eyebrows lifted, but she didn't interrupt. "They don't know I heard them. My daughter-in-law said by tomorrow she'll be out of our way. I think they were planning to pressure me or worse." Carla didn't ask for drama. Jay didn't ask for details I wasn't ready to give. Jay just nodded and said, "Let's talk about your options." We spent an hour going over everything. The money, my current assets, the small apartment I still owned in Montana, my pension. I told her I wasn't interested in revenge. I just wanted to make sure that if something ever happened to me, Ethan and Melissa wouldn't be able to take control of my estate. Not without my consent, not ever again. "Let's set up a trust," she said. "You can name someone else as a trustee. You'll stay in control for now. But if anything goes wrong, they can't touch it." I nodded double quotes and she continued. "We can add a clause that specifically excludes certain people from accessing the funds." I looked her in the eye. "Do it." By the end of the appointment, I had signed the initial paperwork. Carla made copies of the check and locked the originals in her secure file cabinet. "Do you want to notify your son about this change?" she asked. "No," I said. "Not yet. Let them wonder." I left the office feeling steadier than I had in days. That night, I didn't turn off my phone, but I didn't answer it either. Ethan had called once in the morning, and again around 6 p.m. he left a voicemail. "Hey, Mom. Just wanted to check if everything's okay. Melissa said you left kind of early and we haven't heard from you. Give me a call when you can. No rush, no rush." That phrase stuck with me. They weren't worried. They were waiting, planning, hoping I would come back with the check in hand, and asked to stay another night. I didn't call him back. The next morning, Carla emailed me copies of the trust setup. Everything was moving forward. I replied to confirm. Then I walked to a cafe nearby, got myself a coffee, and opened my notebook. I started writing down everything I remembered from that night in the hallway agged words. Tone, how they looked, where they were standing. I even noted the way Melissa's voice didn't shake. I didn't know if I'd ever need it, but I wanted a record. After lunch, I went to a small real estate office. I asked about short-term rentals. Nothing fancy, just something furnished where I could stay a few months while I figured things out. The agent, a kind woman named Sarah, said she had 2 options. I picked the quieter 1A, older 1-bedroom cottage at the edge of town. It wasn't modern, but it had a porch, a working heater, and a locking front door. That was enough. I signed a 3-month lease and paid in full with a separate bank account I opened that same day. By the end of that week, I had a new address, a trust that protected every cent of my savings. and a lawyer who now knew everything. I was afraid to say out loud. I hadn't told Ethan where I was. I didn't plan to, but on the 6th day, something changed. I received a message from a blocked number. Just one sentence, "You know this isn't over, right?" I stared at the screen. My heart was steady. I didn't answer. I took a screenshot and forwarded it to Carla. Then I sat on my new porch and looked out at the quiet street. They thought they could use me. They thought they could pressure me into signing something, giving them money, or leaving the picture quietly. But they didn't expect me to disappear, and they didn't expect me to come back stronger. I had no intention of fighting them publicly. I wasn't interested in drama or revenge, but I wasn't done because now I had time. I had space. I had everything they thought they could take from me, and they didn't even realize they'd already lost. The message came on a Thursday. Just one sentence. "You know, this isn't over, right?" I sat there on the front porch of the cottage, holding my phone, staring at those 8 words. No name, no number. Just a blocked sender and a tone I recognized too well. It didn't take much effort to guess where it came from. Melissa had always been careful with her words, but not her attitude. This was her way of reminding me she wasn't done. I didn't reply, took a screenshot, forwarded it to Carla, and wrote a note. "Received this just now. Not sure who sent it, but I have a good idea." She replied within 20 minutes. "Got it. Documented and saved. We'll keep a record of anything else that happens. Let me know if you feel unsafe." That night, I locked the doors twice and left a light on in the hallway. The cottage was small enough that I could hear every creak and tick of the walls, but I didn't feel scared. Not exactly. It's just alert. Like I had to be ready for something even if I didn't know what yet. The next morning, I went to the grocery store like usual. I bought eggs, bread, coffee, and a newspaper. When I came out to my car, there was a note under my windshield wiper. No envelope. It's just a folded piece of paper with my name written across the top. Maggie. I looked around the parking lot, heart pounding. There was no one standing nearby. Just a few people loading groceries and 2 teenagers sitting in a truck with the engine running. I got in the car, locked the doors, and unfolded the note. "You shouldn't have left. This isn't how families handle things. You owe us a conversation." No signature. But the handwriting was familiar. "Ethan." I drove back to the cottage slowly, both hands gripping the wheel. My son had never been the one to raise his voice. He didn't threaten. That was always Melissa's role. Ethan stood in the background, watching, agreeing quietly, nodding when she spoke. But this note, this was his way of showing that he was still in it with her, that he agreed with whatever came next. I called Carla again, and she picked up on the second ring. "I just found a handwritten note on my car," I said. "You're sure it was him?" "I recognize his handwriting, I'm sure." "Okay. Do you feel in danger?" "Not yet. But I don't like where this is heading. I'll file a protective intent notice," she said. "Not a restraining order yet, but a formal record that you've begun to receive unwanted communication. If anything escalates, we'll move forward immediately." I thanked her and hung up. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. What I felt was disappointment. A deep, dull kind that settled into my bones. This wasn't just about the money anymore. This was about control. I spent the rest of the day indoors. The check was no longer in my purse, had given it to Carla, and signed the trust paperwork. Legally, Ethan and Melissa couldn't touch a penny, but they didn't know that. And they were still trying to pull me back into their plan. Whatever. It was that evening, around 6 o'clock, Ethan called. This time, I answered. "Hi," I said. "Mom," he replied. "I've been trying to reach you." "So?" There was a long pause. "We need to talk," he said. "No, we don't. Mom, don't do this. It's not fair." "Fair," I repeated. "You left without saying anything. Melissa and I were worried. We didn't know if you were okay." "Knew I was okay," I said. "You just didn't know where I went." "There's a difference." Another pause. "I don't know what you think you heard. I know what I heard, Ethan." Silence. "She didn't mean it like that," he said eventually. But there was no conviction in his voice. "You don't need to explain," I said. "I'm not calling to argue. I just wanted to let you know that I've made other arrangements. The money is no longer available to you." His voice rose just slightly. "Wait, Mom, hold on. We never even got to talk about it. You never gave me a chance to explain." "I gave you 30 years of chances," I said, keeping my tone even. "You made your choice. I'm making mine." Then I hung up. He didn't call back. The next 3 days were quiet. No new messages, no visits. I began to settle into a rhythm. Every morning I made coffee, went for a short walk, read the paper, I cooked simple meals. I wrote in my notebook, even if just to remind myself that what I was doing mattered, that I hadn't overreacted, that I wasn't crazy. Then, on Monday morning, the mail came. Among the ads and local coupons was a plain white envelope with no return address. Inside, I found a printout photos, pictures of me arriving at the law office, another one outside, the grocery store, one of me sitting on the cottage porch with a book in my lap. No note, just the images. I called Carla immediately. I just received photos of myself. Someone's been watching me. Are you okay? Yes, shaken, but okay. We're escalating, she said. This is harassment. I'm filing a no-contact order and a harassment claim. We'll submit the images and the past messages as supporting evidence. I agreed. That night, I packed a small overnight bag and went to a hotel again just to sleep without looking over my shoulder. I didn't tell anyone where I was going, not even Carla. I didn't want to take any risks at the front desk. I paid in cash and used only my first name, the receptionist. Didn't ask questions. In that room with blackout curtains and a view of nothing. I finally cried. Not because I was scared, but because of what had become of the one relationship I thought was safe. My son, my only son, was watching me through a camera lens, or at least allowing someone else to. I hadn't told Carla the whole truth yet. I hadn't told her that I had found a signed power of attorney form in Ethan's desk drawer the night before I left. A blank signature line for me, already dated with a notary section pre-filled. The implication was clear. They had plans. Legal plans. Ones they expected to go through. They just didn't expect me to leave. Now they were pushing, testing how far I'd go. But I wasn't going anywhere. I was preparing, and they had no idea what I still had left. I spent 2 nights at the hotel. I didn't tell Carla where I was until I checked out. I didn't use my real last name when booking, and I kept my phone on airplane mode except for brief windows when I needed to check her emails. The photos had rattled me more than I expected. Knowing someone had followed Metrack me from the lawyer's office to the grocery store to my front porch made it impossible to sleep without checking the hallway through the peephole every hour. I wasn't scared in the usual sense. I didn't think Ethan or Melissa would physically harm me, but they had crossed into something else now. Something colder, more methodical. They weren't yelling, they weren't begging, they were watching, gathering information, trying to make me feel cornered. It was the same way they used to handle everything. Subtle pressure until the other person bent, but I wasn't bending. When I got back to the cottage on Wednesday morning, the mailbox was empty and the porch looked undisturbed. I checked every window, locked the door behind me, and walked through each room just to be sure. Then I called Carla and gave her a full update, including the night away. I need to show you something else, I told her. Something I didn't bring up earlier. We scheduled a time for the next day. I drove to her office with a small folder in my purse inside. It was a copy of the power of attorney form I found in Ethan's desk drawer during my last night at his house. It had been tucked in a file labeled future planning. The signature line for me had been left blank, but everything else had been filled in. It gave full control of my assets to Ethan, effective immediately upon signing. He was going to ask me to sign this, I told Carla, placing the document on the table. Or force it. She examined it silently, flipping through the pages. It's not legally binding without your signature, she said, but the intent is clear. I think Melissa drafted it, I added. It matches the formatting of some other papers she handled for their mortgage. Carla nodded. We'll scan this and keep it on file, she said. You're doing the right thing, bringing it in now. Between this, the photos, and the note, we're building a clear picture. I want to make sure they can't touch anything, I said. Not if I'm alive, not if I'm gone, not ever. You've already locked them out of the trust. She reminded me. But if you want extra protection, we can draft an addendum explicitly naming them as excluded beneficiaries. Yes, I said immediately. Do it. By the end of that meeting, the paperwork was underway. Every document was backed by evidence. Every file duplicated and stored in secure cloud storage. Carla had already flagged the photos and note. With the local police, nothing official yet. But she said if anything escalated again, we could press for a protective order. Back at the cottage, I pulled out a small box from the back of the bedroom closet. It had every document I'd saved over the years, Ethan's birth certificate, His old school awards, letters he wrote me as a child. I couldn't bring myself to throw them out. But I also couldn't keep pretending he was still that boy. He wasn't that night. For the first time in weeks, I called someone who wasn't a lawyer. Her name was Dorothy. She was my oldest friend from high school. We hadn't spoken regularly in years, but she had always been kind. The last time we saw each other was at my husband's funeral, almost 8 years ago. She lived 2 states away now, retired, widowed, quiet life. She picked up after 3 rings. "Maggie," she said, sounding shocked. "Is everything all right?" "No," I said, "but I think I'm going to be." We talked for over an hour. I didn't give her all the details, but I gave her enough. She didn't interrupt. She didn't try to tell me what to do. When I told her about the photos and the pressure, she didn't say, "They're still your family." She just said, "You did the right thing by leaving." Before we hung up, she said something that stuck with me. "Protect your peace, Maggie. Whatever you have to do." The next morning, I drove to the bank and closed the joint savings account I had once opened in Ethan's name just in case he ever needed help. He'd never deposited a dime into it, only withdrawals. Forgotten the account even existed until I checked my financials with Carla. I transferred what little was left into my own account and had the bank flag any attempts to access future records under his name. On my way out, I saw a familiar car parked across the street. It's a white SUV, same make and model as Melissa's. I didn't go to the car. I didn't call the police. Didn't run. Got into my own car, drove a few blocks. Then pulled into a pharmacy parking lot and waited. 5 minutes later, the SUV passed by. I couldn't see who was driving. I called Carla from the car. "Are we ready to file the restraining order?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "We have enough." That afternoon, we filed the paperwork. The judge granted a temporary protective order the next morning. Ethan and Melissa were now legally prohibited from contacting me in any form. No calls, no messages, no in-person visits. Carla arranged for the order to be served immediately that night. Around 9 p.m., I got a single missed call from an unknown number. No message, just a hang dash up. It was the last call I would get for a while. The silence that followed was strange, but not unwelcome. No more texts, no more photos. No more cars across the street. I didn't know if they were regrouping or giving up. I didn't care. The next weekend, I signed the final addendum to the trust. Ethan and Melissa were officially removed as potential heirs. The trust now named my estate executor as Carla, and the beneficiary as a scholarship fund for low income women over 50 returning to school. It was something I had dreamed of doing years ago, before the guilt, before the obligations, before Melissa ever entered our lives. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. If Ethan came to my door tomorrow, begging, crying, full of apologies, I wouldn't scream or slam the door. Listen. Then I'd close it, kindly but firmly. Some things, once broken, don't get put back together. They had tried to trap me. Instead, I locked them out quietly, permanently, and without another word, got the silence after the restraining order. It's unlike anything I'd experienced since walking out of Ethan's house. First, I kept expecting something, a knock at the door, another anonymous message, a letter tucked under the windshield wiper. But nothing came. Not on Monday, not on Friday, not the week after. I waited. Not because I wanted to hear from them, but because I didn't believe silence would be the end. Ethan and Melissa weren't the kind of people who gave up when they didn't get what they wanted. They had been used to easy control for years, and I had been part of that pattern always, giving in, always fixing things, always smoothing over whatever they broke. Now that I wasn't doing any of those things, I assumed they'd find another way. But instead, everything went quiet. 2 weeks passed with no new contact. Carla confirmed that the protective order had been served successfully. No response, no contest. They had the option to appear in court if they wanted to fight it. They didn't. They may be hoping it all goes away, she said, but it won't. Good, I said. Let it stay that way. I started sleeping better. I stopped checking the porch twice a night. I stopped carrying my phone from room to room like a shield. I began walking through the town without scanning the street for familiar vehicles. It wasn't peace exactly, but it was the beginning of something close. Then, on the 17th day, a letter arrived. Not from Ethan, not from Melissa. It was from a woman named Gloria Lang, Melissa's mother. I hadn't heard from Gloria in years. We Met briefly during Ethan and Melissa's engagement, one lunch, one bridal shower, and a few stiff holiday cards. She was quiet, private, well-dressed, always seemed distant. I remember thinking she was the coldest person in the room until I met her daughter. The envelope was cream-colored, thick, no return address, but postmarked from their city. I sat at the kitchen table and opened it carefully. Inside was a single page, typed, no signature. Maggie, I heard what happened. I want you to know that not everyone in this family agrees with the way Melissa handled things. I never said anything before because it wasn't my place. But I knew, and I'm sorry. Whatever happens now, I hope you find peace. GL, I read it twice. Then a third time. I didn't feel comforted. I didn't feel angry either. It was strange, more like an acknowledgement. That someone had been watching all along but chose not to act. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer with the rest of the documents Carla had filed. It didn't change anything. But it confirmed what I already knew: Melissa had always been this way. And people around her had always chosen to stay silent. I didn't single quotes too. Days later, I got a voicemail from an unknown number. A woman's voice. Hi, Maggie. I'm not sure if this number still belongs to you, but I wanted to say something. I'm Lauren. Used to work with Melissa at her last job, the architecture firm. We weren't close, but saw your name in the news online. Something about a trust dispute, and I put the pieces together. I remember she used to brag about your money, how you owed them because you were living off retirement and didn't need it anyway. Just wanted you to know that not everyone believed her. Some of us saw through it. Anyway, that's all. Sorry if this is out of line. I sat with the phone in my lap for a long time. I hadn't known Melissa lost that job. I never knew she worked at an architecture firm. Ethan had once said she was consulting, but I never asked for details. Maybe because I was afraid of what I'd find out. Or maybe because I didn't want to face how little I really knew about the woman my son had married. That same evening, I made a decision. I drove to the post office and prepared 2 letters. One to Carla. One to the local district clerk's office. The letter to Carla was simple. It outlined everything I'd received since the last update, Gloria's letter. It's a voicemail and a brief summary of Melissa's past behavior regarding my finances. I asked Carla to keep everything on file and to draft a final version of my living will, excluding Ethan from any medical decisions should anything happen to me. The letter to the clerk's office requested a notarized update to my power of attorney, revoking all prior versions and assigning full control to a neutral third-party financial firm. Just in case Ethan ever tried to claim I had agreed to something else, I didn't think it would come to that, but I was done giving them the benefit of the doubt. The next week, I signed the final revisions with Carla. I also asked her a question I hadn't dared to voice before. What happens if they go public? If they try to make it look like I'm the one who abandoned them? Carla looked at me over her glasses. They can try, she said. But you have your records. You have a paper trail. And if it comes to that, we'll respond. Want a public fight? Then you won't have one, she said. We'll handle it the way you've handled everything so far, quietly, but firmly. I nodded. The cottage felt different that night. Not like a hiding place. Not like a shelter. More like a home. It was temporary, I knew that, but it was mine. Paid for by my own money. Lived in under my own terms. I wasn't waiting for permission from anyone anymore. A week later, I got one final package, no return. Addressed inside was a photo album. I didn't have to guess who sent it. The first page was a picture of Ethan as a child, holding a plastic sword, smiling at the camera. The next page was me and him on his high school graduation day. The next one, his wedding day. The pages went on birthdays, holidays, all the years I had funded, photographed, and held together. There was no note, just the images. I closed the album after page 14 and put it in the closet. They were trying to make me remember who used to be, what I used to give, what they thought I might still be willing to do, but they were too late. The woman in those photos doesn't exist anymore, and neither does the version of me who let people steal from her with a smile. The photo album stayed in the closet. I didn't throw it away. I didn't burn it. I just didn't want it near me. It felt like a Toulon other quiet attempt to pull me back in under the disguise of memory, but I had already done the hardest part. I had broken the pattern. And now I wasn't going back. A few days after I received the album, Carla called. She sounded calm but firm. I just got word through a contact. She said, "Your son is trying to file a petition to contest your trust. It's not going to go anywhere, but you should know. Is it official? I asked. He's trying to find a way in through something called concern for diminished capacity. It won't hold. There's too much documentation in your favor and no medical basis. He has no case. I didn't speak right away. I felt tired, not shaken, not staken. Afraid? Just tired of watching someone I raised try to cut me out of my own life. Let him file it, I finally said. Let it go to court. I have time. She paused. You're sure? Yes. I want it on record. That week, I met with Carla again in person. We compiled all the documents, every letter, every photo, every voicemail, and the original power of attorney form they had pro-written. We even included copies of the restraining order and the updated trust. She handed me a folder at the Yakment Ev. If anything ever happens to me, I said, make sure all of this is delivered to the court and to the executor. It will be, she said, but you're going to be fine, Maggie. I know, I said. I'm just ready to finish this. 2 weeks later, the court dismissed Ethan's petition before it reached a hearing. No standing, no merit. Number. Medical evidence. The judge didn't even schedule a meeting. Carla called me the next morning. It's over, she said. I figured. They didn't even show up to the filing office to receive the rejection. Of course they didn't. I knew how they operated on the comment when they thought the outcome would be easy. Quiet when the risk turned real. After that, there were no more letters, no more calls, no more anonymous envelopes or photographs. Ethan and Melissa went silent, not because they understood, but because they ran out of angles to play. A month passed. Then, too, I renewed my cottage lease for another 6 months. I enrolled in a local art class. I went to a community meeting about volunteer literacy programs. I stopped checking my phone every night before bed. I started reading books again, not just legal documents, not notes from lawyers' books about ordinary people living small lives without chaos. It felt new, not dramatic, not life-changing, just new. Then, one afternoon in early spring, I received a letter. It was from a school, a private academy in the suburbs. Melissa's niece attended it. I remembered hearing the name once or twice during holidays. Inside the envelope was a child's drawing, crayon on white paper, a house, a sun, a stick figure with short hair, a woman holding hands with a little girl. On the back, in careful handwriting, it said, Aunt Maggie, I hope you're happy. I miss you. Love, Emily. There was no return address, but the envelope was postmarked with the school's zip code. I sat at the table with the drawing in my lap, unsure how it had even reached. I had never met Emily more than twice. I hadn't spoken to her since the Christmas Ethan and Melissa canceled at the last minute because the roads were too icy. I didn't know what prompted it. Maybe she remembered me. Maybe someone told her I was gone. Maybe she just found a picture and asked where I went. I folded the drawing and placed it gently in a plastic sleeve. Then I put it in the same folder with everything else. It didn't change what I had done, but it reminded me of why I did it. This wasn't just about punishing anyone. This wasn't about revenge. This was about making sure I left nothing behind for people who treated me like a stepping stone. And more importantly, it was about proving to myself that I could walk away without burning down the house. I made one final call to Carla that week. I asked her to add a clause to the trust one small change, a separate education fund. Not for Ethan, not for Melissa, for Emily. She'd get access when she turned 18, not because she was owed anything, but because no one had taught her better yet. And maybe someone needed to show her there was another way to treat people. Carla didn't ask questions, she just said, done. That Sunday, I sat on the front porch of the cottage. The air was cool and the wind was soft. I made a cup of tea and opened a blank notebook. At the top of the first page, I wrote, "This is what happened when I stopped letting them choose for me." I didn't know what would come after that sentence. But I didn't need to know, because, for the first time in years, everything ahead of me was mine. Quiet, secure, and finally mine.